Welcome to another segment of provocative conversations destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Hello, back here with you again, the proud heretic. We are continuing on in the pandemic vision / dream that I had in the midst of this period of the pandemic. Just a few days post me understanding that things that God was speaking to me up to a year and a half prior to March of 2020 were in reference to the pandemic season that is now upon us, that we're now in. March 18th was the day, 2020, that I came into a revelation that, wow, this is what you were talking about, God. But here, the vision that I had, the vision / dream that I had, is March the 31st of 2020. I've already given you the vision itself. Now I want to go into some detail in regards to what these things meant or mean. Most of it God gave to me right after I had the vision, and I input it into my laptop at the time. I do these things. I don't wait in between time because I don't want to lose anything that I received. So I jump on it. I stop what I'm doing. I do what I need to do in order to be right in line with God. Whatever it is God is saying, I want to catch it. I don't want to lose it. Procrastinating, not moving on what I know I should be doing. So I like to jot it down quick, immediately, so that I don't lose anything. I don't add anything to it or anything. It's all fresh. Okay, let's go on. Upon hearing what God said to me on the actual morning of my vision / dream, we'll just say vision, along with having been given greater insight into all that I experienced in that vision, I am openly updating my understanding and interpretation of what I saw during that experience. Because as I go on, I begin to see more of what God was meaning, God meant when he showed me what he showed me. First, the surrounding territory that contained the mentioned orange clay dirt like field, that not like it was, but clay dirt field that turned out to be a huge landfill where dead bodies were being discarded of. It seems to speak of several things. It seems to two things that stick out to me. It speaks of the now known vast clay dirt landfill that was shown on the news in New York, where numerous dead bodies were being placed into due to the massive victims of the virus in that state, in which the number of dead bodies multiplied so quickly that there was no place to quickly and safely discard of the bodies, which created a backlog of dead bodies at hospitals, morgues, nursing homes, funeral homes, and the lack of space on refrigerator trucks. So there was a backlog of bodies at hospitals and morgues and nursing homes and funeral homes. They also had a lack of space as far as the refrigerated trucks. Some of you will recall that there were so many dead bodies that they were getting 18-wheelers. They were getting trucks and putting the dead bodies on refrigerated trucks. Some of the trucks were refrigerated, not all. In order to house the dead bodies until they could get into not the morgue, but so that they could get into, say, the funeral homes and into the ground and whatever else, however they were discarding of the bodies, or into having them cremated. I'm not sure, but there were some cremations going on as well, especially them not knowing how bodily fluids affect others, even when the person has deceased from the virus. What about the bodily fluids? What do we do about the body itself? So they were wanting to cremate bodies, or they were cremating bodies. I'm sure they still are cremating bodies. But it speaks to that dirt field. It speaks to what we're beginning to see around the world, where fields are being dug out, large grave sites, large landfills for dead bodies are being dug out, hewed out, in order to put dead bodies there. It also speaks to the now published orange red clay dirt landfill that is located in Brazil. All you have to do now is go and Google Brazil human landfills, Brazil graves due to the coronavirus graves, and you will see huge red dirt landfills located in Brazil where mass graves were dug for the unprecedented number of dead people due to the virus in that country, in which they are being overrun by the catastrophic outbreak of the virus's raging effects upon the human body. In fact, at this recording, if I'm correct, Brazil is right behind America in the amount of dead, the amount of sick. But you have a Brazilian president, ironically, who behaves like this president does. This divided states of stolen America, Donald Trump does, in relation to the virus. He's rebellious, he's prideful, and no one tells him what to do, and he's not shutting down his economy, and it's all a fake. And just like the Brazilian president, Donald Trump, both of them have contracted the virus. Isn't that ironic? The surrounding landscape and cosmic atmosphere of my vision, it seems to speak to the fact that, as God stated to me, the United States will resemble a third world country after the events of this pandemic. God told me that the United States is going to look like a third world nation when all of this is said and done. We will resemble a third world country after the events of this pandemic season due to the political, economic, social, educational, legal, health care devastation and destruction, along with the sheer number of deaths and sickness that will be due to the virus and the other events that will occur in this season. God says, because of all of the unrest, all of the, all of the condition of the political and the economic and the social and the educational and the health systems, all of the systems crashing, along with the sheer number of deaths and sickness that will transpire throughout this season due to the virus and other events, the violence and all. He said, we will look like a third world nation by the time all of this is over. A third world nation. Again, the surrounding landscape and cosmic atmosphere of my vision seem to speak to the fact that this is what God stated to me. Many businesses will close for good because of the direct impact of this season upon the business world financially. Notice how I said that there were no buildings, there were no businesses around any of this. I was just out in nowhere. It was a barren land. God said to me, many businesses will close for good because of the direct impact of this season upon the business world financially. Many other businesses will close because of the sheer toll of death. He says many owners and CEO members of businesses will cease in their existence. And this was in March 2020. He spoke that to me. He says many workers will not return. Many workers will not return due to death. Many workers will have no place to return to. There will be no place for people to return because the doors of their workplaces will be completely and permanently shut. He says that the economy will suffer greatly during this season, that there will not be a bounce back in the economy as we're looking for, a spring back. The economy will not bounce back. The economy will not bounce back quickly. People will bounce back, but the economy will not quickly. God says the economy will not bounce back quickly again, and there will be a long economic struggle. The economic struggle throughout this season will continue even beyond this season. He says the local economies will see a shortage like they have never seen before. There will be a shortage in every area. There will be a decline in every area of the economy. So all that I was seeing speaks of the economy, speaks of how it's going to take. This pandemic season is going to have such an effect, such an impact upon businesses. The lack of architectural beauty and the absence of buildings seems to speak of the impact that this season will have upon jobs and the economy as a whole. It, along with the absence of lively businesses such as hospitals, schools, banks, shopping centers, malls, restaurants, or even grocery stores, and the hustle and bustle of daily commerce, none of that was visual. None of that was able to be seen in my vision/dream. None of that was around. The absence of activity by children and people in general seems to speak regarding how things will be and what will be affected during this season. The dim and gloomy overcast that I saw seems to speak to the dark cloud that is hovering over this pandemic season, and that God said that this is a dark period in history. This is a dark period in the church. This is a dark period in the world. It all speaks regarding the darkness of this season in general, in which God stated to me that there are dark days ahead, both for the world and the United States, and even for the church. I was told that there will be many dark days and that this will be a dark season due to the many events within this season and their impact upon the systems and lifestyles of both the United States and the world. The dreariness of the atmosphere of my vision/dream also seems to speak of the hearts of the people during this season, in which God stated to me that there will be great sorrow and mourning due to the destruction, the devastation, the chaos, the violence, the lack of provisions, the sick, the dead, the financial woes and fears, and the loss of faith, hope, and surety of the future. That's what the dreariness and gloominess of the atmosphere seem to speak of. The lack of visible vegetation of any sort seems to speak of several things. It seems to speak of what was stated to me by God, that there will be starvation, hunger, and food shortage within the United States and the world during this pandemic season. How people will be without many of the daily necessities of life, or that we assumed we needed at one time, and the things we had become so accustomed to. It also speaks of the fact that the economy will not bounce back quickly, that there again would be a long economic struggle, and it'll continue beyond this season. The local economies will see a shortage like they've never seen before, and there will be a shortage in every area. There will be a decline in every area of the economy. He gave that to me that the morning of the vision. Also, on the morning of the vision, he said this in relation to the lack of vegetation of any sort. He says, during this season, the assistance will begin to fade away. There will no longer be assistance. People will experience hunger. People will be hungry throughout this season. This season will put a demand upon the food supply. People will struggle to eat. They'll struggle for basic necessities, and there will be no assistance. There will be no assistance rendered, for the assistance will cease. We're seeing food banks and all being so hard hit. Food is not coming through the supply system as they once did. We're seeing these handouts being real scarce because of the amount of people who's needing handouts. The location of my vision being indicative of a third world country and its impoverished state speaks of the United States symbolically becoming like a third world country, especially as that of Africa, which was where my vision seemed to have taken place. The United States either becoming or resembling or being considered or looked upon as a third world country during this season is what this seems to represent. It seems to imply how the world will look at us in utter shame while shaking their heads in great dismay at our condition morally, spiritually, medically, economically, politically, legally, and socially, which is what God stated to me would be. The location, and that it was indicative of a third world country, it seems to speak of how the United States will resemble or is resembling and being viewed as a third world country due to the mass number of deaths and sickness, and the fact that God stated to me that the United States would lead in every category of this pandemic season, including deaths, sickness, political upheaval, social unrest, job loss, economic disaster, violence, and the like. Apparently, the deaths, the sickness, the disasters, the devastation that will occur within the United States will have only been heard of or alluded to in reference to a third world country such as Africa prior to this period. Perhaps the poverty that I saw is representative of the future state of the world, and most definitely the United States. Perhaps it speaks of how impoverished the United States and other parts of the world will be and look after this pandemic season plays itself through. The fact of my vision/dream, the fact of it resembling the nation of Africa, and that it included all black workers. I saw no Caucasians, all black workers who were naked black workers, not just black workers, but naked. It seems to speak of seems to speak to the relationship that the United States both had and has with Africa in relation to its founding, its construction, and continued wealth. In other words, the United States has a direct relationship with Africa in relation to how the United States was founded upon the backs of African slaves. Its construction, how the United States was constructed by the hands of black slaves from Africa, and how the wealth of the United States was amassed through the hands of black slaves from Africa. The fact that my vision and dream, or dream, however you want to say it, the fact of it resembling the nation of Africa and had all blacks working, it seems to speak to the different roles that blacks have and continue to play in the founding, constructing, financial wealth, population growth, and the protecting of America. Who's done that for America? Blacks. The positions that we've had to hold militarily, increasing the overall number factor, amount of human beings in the United States, our population factor, the wealth state of the United States, financial wealth state, the constructing that's continuing even now through legal enslavement by those who own businesses and corporations throughout the United States. Who do they use? They use blacks to do their menial services. It seems to speak of possibly the enslavement and the killing and the torturing and the raping and the stripping of blacks from the nation of Africa throughout history. It seems to speak of the heavy involvement of blacks and people of color during this season, due to being disproportionately infected and affected by the death and sickness of the virus during this season, and the labor disparities that exist, how blacks are frontline workers, more blacks are frontline workers than whites, how they are being disproportionately affected, the Africans, the African Americans, the Americans who were born here but whose roots extend back into Africa. It seems to speak of the direct impact that seasons past, and even how the current pandemic season will have the impact that seasons past, and how this current season will have such an impact upon blacks and the people of color in the area of economics, social inequalities, injustices, and the violence that has yet to be carried out, but will be. Seems to be a possible reference to the mass deaths to blacks around the world and the overall impact upon nations where blacks reside, which will have a great impact upon the black population worldwide. It seems to perhaps speak to the attention that is to be given to the nation of Africa and the uprising of African Americans during and beyond this season of events. It seems to perhaps speak specifically to Africa during this pandemic season, who will play a significant role during this season and be heavily impacted in a negative sense during this season. In relation to the actual military style vehicle that was being used in my vision, the style vehicle seems to speak, the fact that it was military style, seems to speak to the following. It seems to represent the tractor trailers with cargo beds that are being used in the United States and around the world to store the growing numbers of dead bodies due to the virus. Notice it was a truck. And notice where they're putting dead bodies right now, on the back of trucks, 18-wheelers. This was not noticed by me until after I had the vision and dream, and after hearing what God said to me on that morning. Afterwards, immediately upon turning on the television, CNN was airing a hospital in New York that had tractor trailer trucks backed in behind the hospital itself that was being used to store the dead bodies as they were piling up elsewhere. I saw this immediately after inputting what God said to me. I cut on the television and I saw these trucks backed up at hospitals for dead bodies. It seems to represent the fact that the fact that there were military vehicles, that the military will be intricately and heavily involved in the events throughout the pandemic period itself, including the National Guard and active duty personnel, even with the processing and discarding of dead bodies. Well, if you've been paying any attention, you realize back in April and May and all, and even June, July, you saw all the military activity, all the military hand power being put to use for this pandemic period, whether it was protecting places, using them to deal with the overflow from the hospitals, using them to build makeshift hospitals, using them to go into the communities and build clinics and all to help the people, to test the people, and having just security as it relates to all the civil unrest and how the president was calling on the military to help bring order, some type of order to that. It speaks of my children's, that military vehicle speaks of my children's involvement in this season as well, as each of them, with the exception of one who's in the Air Force, the 4 who's in the Army, each has a medical MOS or a medical job and is heavily involved. They are heavily involved. They are heavily involved in the medical proportion of what the military is doing in their involvement during this season. At least 3 of my children are working directly with, or were at the time of this vision and dream, working directly with or around patients with the virus, though each of the 5 are in contact with people who are or have tested positive for the virus. Each of my children have been around people. It shows who has battled this virus and who have succumbed to the virus. But each of my children, all being military, it speaks to that military involvement that will occur during this process. And I saw in my vision/dream, which had not been the case at the time of my actually seeing this vision/dream, the involvement of the military in all of this. It speaks of the military's involvement throughout this season, the military's involvement throughout the protests and the violence occurring during this season. that will most likely lead to a civil war or a civil war-like outbreak. I don't know what it takes to be deemed a civil war. I don't know who gets to call that shot as to whether it is considered to be a civil war, but you will still have civil war-like outbreaks of violence. The fact that the workers that I saw were all black in their race and varied in age and without protective gear, any protective PPE gear in the midst of this pandemic or clothing, may speak to several things. Here you have black people forced to work on the front line, first contactors and first contractors of the virus, void of any PPE gear or any covering clothing. It seems to speak to the enslaved black laborers of both the past and the present, who were and are being tasked with frontline jobs that are amongst the lowest of pay and absent of union and medical coverage, just to make ends meet. Just to make ends meet. It seems to speak of how a great number of blacks, especially black males, are void of any protection while in public and therefore left naked and vulnerable. It seems to speak to blacks who are being forced to clean up and discard the victims of their own communities and bury their own dead in unprecedented numbers, which can explain why the bodies of so many people of color were seen by me. It seems to speak of the incarcerated black males of virtually all ages and perhaps even black females who are among the disproportionate number of African Americans who are enslaved by the tyranny of mass incarceration, especially within the United States. It seems to speak to how blacks are continuously being forced to bury their own dead within their communities from black on black murders and even murder at the hands of law enforcement. It seems to speak to those within the disproportionate inmate population who will be forced to bag up and bury their own as the virus rips through the prison populations of this world. Though this does not mean incarcerated people of other racial or ethnic backgrounds will not be affected by this virus as well, but it does speak directly to those of color, how it will affect them in the prison population. I spoke what God said about the prison population, that it will be a pandemic in itself. The cold insensitivity of the workers and their youthful ages seems to represent the forced role of black males throughout history to provide for their own families amid the dangers within the workplace, thus leading to depression and the lack of self-dignity and hope, which could also explain why their faces were so emotionless. They had no emotions, emotionless and cold. It speaks to the cold insensitivity of the workers and their youthful ages seem to represent the mental state of blacks in general, resulting from years of slavery, injustice, inequality, failure on the part of religion, on the part of religion and the church. Let's go to it again. It seems to speak to the mental state of blacks in general, resulting from years of slavery, injustice, inequality, and failure on the part of religion and the church. It seems to speak to joblessness, loss of loved ones, lack of education, incarceration stemming from joblessness and underpaid labor, etc. Now, it seems to speak to, when you look at the insensitivity of the workers and the ages of the people, it seems to speak to the impact that this pandemic season is having upon the psyche of people's outlook on the future throughout the black community, coupled with all the race-related improprieties and other systemic issues of our day. It seems to speak to how paralyzing this pandemic season will be for people due to the catastrophic events that will take place, leading to a vast number of deaths of unprecedented numbers, thus causing people to become numb. It seems to speak to the children who have and will lose so many of their loved ones during this season due to the virus, other illnesses, and the increase in violence during this period of unrest and civil revolt, and will be forced to bury their own dead in the midst of everything going on. It seems to speak to people within black communities and other communities of color, and how there will be an absence of human display, or the human display of emotions and sensitivity due to the events of this season. The absence of the human display. Perhaps the ones who are supposed to groom our emotions and to teach us sensitivity were among the ones who have and will die, who have died and will die during and perhaps even beyond the pandemic season due to the events of this season, and that they were unable to fully teach them before they died. In other words, the youthful ages of those people and the fact that they had no emotions seem to speak of how many youthful people, youthful ages of people will die, having never been given that nurturing teaching, never experiencing that grooming that many of us were able to experience because our parents and those who were our caregivers were alive and were able to impart that to us before experiencing their own death. Perhaps this is why there was such a callous coldness about everything. It speaks to those who have suffered the loss of parents, guardians, older siblings, and others who are no longer present to assist in parent or parental guidance. Parental guidance, parental nurturing, and teaching that those individuals, their parents, grandparents, guardians, or whoever would impart. Due to their loss and the sheer number of deaths in general, people have or will become insensitive to death, which apparently speaks to why the workers I saw were not bothered in the least bit by the bloodied and dismembered bodies of the dead. They didn't care that blood was getting on them. It didn't matter to them how they were being infected or affected by the fluid of these dead people. It speaks to the general insensitivity within the black community and its members that will be displayed and eventually prevail during this season of civil unrest. Perhaps the fact that I could not make out any of the faces or features of the workers other than their skin color and their expressionless faces speaks of the current new normal way of living in which everyone is being encouraged and forced to wear masks. of which people are daily rejecting and protesting against, or doing so wearing the mask and all, because they feel that it infringes upon their right to speak and to choose life over the great potential of death. Such masks are stated even by the President of the United States to do injustice to his pride, his freedom of speech, and deprives them from public display of their facial features. The mask hides all of that. I immediately noticed that inside the bed of the military-style truck that I saw in the vision was filled with dead bodies. The bodies were those of completely naked males and females, both young and old, who all appeared to be black, as I could not recall seeing anyone who was not of color. It appears to represent the unconventional storage of human remains on a truck from the virus due to the grave number of contaminated dead bodies that are unable to be celebrated with a proper or normal funeral or burial as a result of the virus, and the mangling and dismembering of body parts. It seems to speak to the unconventional methods that are and will be used to discard of human remains during this pandemic season. It seems to speak to the fact that blacks during this pandemic season will be tasked to bury many of their own throughout this season of events due to the deaths that will occur on several different levels that would include natural deaths, virus-related, and other related health-related deaths in disproportionate numbers to the blacks, upon the blacks, murders, natural catastrophes, and the like upon the black community or communities. It speaks to the fact that neither gender nor age will be necessarily respected during the eventful happenings of this season. It won't matter what your gender is or what your age is. This season will not have respect of persons and should not render the notion that there would be some greater form of disrespect and sparing of life toward people of other races or ethnicities. In other words, even if it speaks to this fact that blacks in disproportionate numbers will be taken down by all that will occur, does not mean that whites will not, or those of other races will not. It speaks to the fact that there will be both male and female bodies of the dead, because that's what was on that truck, of different ages and of darker skin color, may indicate what we know, which is that blacks and people of color are more disproportionately susceptible to the virus than other people. It seems to speak to the naked bodies of the dead, symbolizing how blacks will be stripped of their dignity during this season, just as they have been since the inception of the United States, or the nation of the divided states. It seems to speak to the fact that, being that God told me that within the actual pandemic of this period in history, there will be a pandemic within the prison system, especially where specifically where many inmates would be affected and even die due to the virus that's happening all around the world now in prisons. Perhaps the many dead bodies that I saw on the vision, in the vision/dream, are representative of those who will die throughout the prison industry of the world during this season. Many of the bodies, the dead bodies, were in bad shape, okay? Many of the dead bodies were in bad shape. Many of the bodies within the bed of the truck were very bloodied, mangled, dismembered, and disembodied. Neither was recognizable by me. Other than their skin tone and gender, I could not make out any identifiable facial feature of the deceased, all which seems to represent the following. It seems to represent the condition of the dead bodies. It seems to speak to the ravaging effect of the virus upon the human body. It seems to speak to the way that bodies were bloodied, mangled, dismembered, and internal organs disembodied. Seems to speak of the violence that I have been told by God that will take place during this season. It speaks of how grotesque the killings and the violence and most likely the civil war will be that will take place upon the face of the earth, or upon male and female, young and old. It seems to speak to the fact that there were no noticeable facial features among the dead. It seems to speak to how black lives will not matter to many during this season, and it's happening, and how death during this season will lose its distinct appearance, and how human lives will not matter to others as they depart this earth. However, your train comes in for you to depart this earth. During this season, death will lose its face, God says, and it speaks to this. The face of death will lose its features. People will no longer view death by its features. People will no longer see the features of the people dead. People's features will no longer matter when it comes to death. During this period, people will no longer matter. Their features will no longer register. People's earthly existence will no longer be relevant. People's life will no longer be relevant. People's earthly identity will no longer be important. People's status will no longer matter. People will be viewed as nothing in relation to their death. The bodies of the dead were being mishandled and thrown around by the workers as though the dead were nothing more than household trash being discarded at some landfill. It was as though those who had died were of no importance, or whose lives had no significance, which speaks of what God stated to me on March the 31st. There will be little regard for the lives of others. People's regard for life will be non-existent. People's lives will no longer matter. Human life will lose its value. Human life will cease in its value. Human life will no longer have value. It speaks of the fact that during this season, human bodies will be decimated. Human bodies will be destroyed. Human bodies will be devalued. People will no longer value the sanctity of human life. Life will lose its sanctity. People will no longer see other people's lives as being valuable. Death will take its toll on the scenes of people, on the senses of people. It speaks to the fact that death will have a desensitizing effect upon people. During this season, people will be desensitized by the amount of deaths. The amount of deaths will cause people to become numb. People's senses will not respond to death. They will be desensitized. Even as the workers were being splattered with bodily fluids of the deceased, no one other than myself was disturbed in the least bit. Each worker, both young and old, tirelessly performed their duties without complaint or emotional display, which puzzled me, as I was very emotionally disturbed by all that I was seeing. All of this, which speaks of the following. It speaks of people during this pandemic season are going to have to be strong. It speaks of how, in order to survive this season, each of us must individually be able to endure the hardships of this season. It speaks to how each of us must individually be willing to mentally handle the blood, gore, violence, sickness, and death that will occur throughout this season, without allowing any of it to cause us to physically or mentally break down or give up. It speaks to the fact that passivity will not have place or space in this season of change, as things will be aggressively violent and gut-wrenching. This is a period of activism. This is not a season that is being brought forth by man, but that man is not orchestrating this. Man is not manipulating this. Man is not producing this. This is not a passive event. This is not a passive period in history, but rather this is an active period, a period of activity, a period of activeness, a period of activation, a period of activists. This is a period where activists are coming forth, something God said to me on June the 3rd. It speaks to the fact that regardless of who dies or is killed during this rough season, we must endeavor to persevere throughout this season with the determination and hope of a new day beyond the rough days ahead of us. It speaks of the time, what God said to me when he said to me on March the 31st, the time is coming where death will become commonplace. And during this season, death will be seen as common. During this season, it will be nothing to see death. Death will lose its impact. Death will no longer have its impact. Death will no longer be experienced the way that it once was. Death will no longer be an issue. Death will no longer be viewed as an issue. People will no longer respond to death in the same manner that they once did. It speaks to what God stated to me when he said the human mindset as it relates to death will be totally different. The human mind will be desensitized. The human mind will be deeply traumatized. This season of death will completely traumatize the human psyche. It speaks to when he stated to me that this is a period of deep mourning, a period of mourning that has never been experienced. The world has never experienced the mourning that will take place during this season. And those who do not experience their own death will experience the effects of death. For the effects of death will be devastating. And there will be devastating effects upon people who are left to experience the death of others during this period. It speaks to what God stated to me again on March 31st when he says, for people to continue, they will have to become desensitized. People will have to lose their sensitivity in order to continue throughout this season. They will have to lose their sensitivity. They will have to become insensitive to the things around them. Because of this, insensitivity will become the norm of the day. It will all become the norm of the day. All these are my thoughts as I have since pondered in great detail what I actually envisioned / dreamed on that morning. Some of it includes information that I receive as time progresses. That I received as time progressed. And as I receive more information from God regarding all that it means. I don't know the full of it. All I know is that it's true. Now on October the 13th, 2020, today is October the 20th, 2020. 7 days ago, God said this to me regarding the vision. He said, the vision that you saw is true. You saw what you were to see. You saw what was meant for you to see. He says, the vision will manifest itself in what you see. The vision will manifest itself to be what you see. The vision will be just as you see, just as you are seeing. There will be many blacks who will not be here. There will be many blacks who will no longer be here due to the violence and the atrocities that will occur in this season. The things that will occur within this season will remove many blacks from the earth's surface. Many will not make it through the violence of this season. There will be a great number of blacks who will be taken from the earth during this season, from the violence and from the sickness. Many will become sick. Many will not recover. There's a whole lot to unwrap and unravel. And trust me, I'm like Paul. I don't even know how to put these in human terms. I don't know how to put everything that I saw. All I know is that there will be an indiscriminate number. There will be a great number from within the black community who will suffer death. As I look at how things are now transpiring, I see how asleep the black community is. How the black community has been trained to eat from the table of whoever is standing up in front of them, telling them what to do. Slaves, obey your master. If you're a slave, then don't seek to be loose. They say an eye for an eye, but then they say, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Yet other communities have been massing up all of their weaponry. They've been making sure that they have their vitamins, their zinc, and all of their other stuff. They've made sure that all of their books are right. All of their barns and storehouses are taken care of. They make sure that they surround themselves, even some within the black community, the elite church folk. They sit with their bodyguards loaded with guns. Your bodyguard shouldn't have bullets in their guns because you preach. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. The gates of hell shall. You say all of these things, but then you still got your bullets and your guns, but you don't tell your members to make sure that they get the same. And the black community is sleeping. We're still trying to go back to the clubs. We're still trying to get drunk and get high. We're still stuck on all of the things that are not healthy to be indulging in this season. The black community is going to suffer great loss during this season. There is a reason why I saw so many black bodies and no others. Does not mean that there will not be others, but what it does mean is that there will be a lot of blacks, a lot of us's. Listen, take heed. Do what you need to prepare yourself. If you are able to, go get you a weapon, a gun, a modern gun. Don't be pulling out granddaddy's gun. Don't be pulling out daddy's gun. Don't be trying to clean junk up. You don't have time for a misfire or something to go wrong where your gun does not function in the need that you need to protect yourself. Go get you something. Get you something modern. Get you something that will level the playing field, that will level the threat, if not overwhelm and overpower the threat. I know that sounds funny, but it used to sound funny to tell black folk to take medicine that the white man concocted, but it's accepted now. There was a time where blacks wouldn't receive a surgery because, again, that's not going through the order of God, so we were taught. But the other races, they were going to get all the surgeries. They were going to get all the education for the to be the surgeons. They knew that's where everything was going and where the money would be. Now you see very few of us at the top of those surgeries. We're underneath those surgeries. Surgeries that probably didn't even need to be done, or surgeries that were done wrongly because those who were performing the surgeries couldn't be sued. They knew they couldn't be sued, and they didn't really care. We got to eat differently. We got to do what we need to do to protect ourselves and live a few days longer, even though I do believe that There's an appointed time and season, and that time is appointed, and it is what it is. But I am going to continue to do what I need to do as far as it relates to what I should be doing in my eating and even in my whatever medication that I'm taking. I need to make sure that I do what I need to do in order to remain in the land of the living. Listen, we're going into some rough waters, and we will be here for a while. God says this will be a very long season. Stop looking for the rapture to come. Stop looking for your modern day rapture to happen and you'll go back to your days as usual. You will never go back there. You cannot go backwards. You are out of Egypt now. You're in a new dispensational period in time. Move forward. Prepare yourself. Prepare your household. Prepare yourself. Do what you need to do. If you're going to become a victim, if you want to call it a victim, then become that victim going out with a fight. Don't just render it. You go out with a fight. You protect yours if you can, if it is to be. Do what you need to do. Go get you a concealed weapons permit. Do what you need to do. It's a sacrifice. It's an investment. You're not trying to go and kill up anybody, but you're not trying to be killed. You're not trying to be injured unnecessarily. Necessarily, unnecessarily, however you want to say it. It all depends on where you are in God's sovereignty. Do what you need to do. If you need to listen to it again, listen to this again. It's a lot of information. It was so hard for me to try and put this in a manner that I can give to the people, but I had to at least give it because I had been saying that I would give it, and I needed to give it because I had it. I need to give it. I need to put it out there and let people, maybe it'll connect with what you have seen, what you have envisioned, or what you have visioned, what you have received from God in a dream, or even in just literal words, whatever it is, you find use for it. If there is use to be found in it, I believe there is. I appreciate it. We'll move on to one of our final topics, subtopics, that is. And I appreciate you for listening.
Hold it right there.
I want to add something right here. I was going to end it right here, or rather I ended it right where I ended it. However, I want to add something here because now that I just on this day of Monday, the 16th of November, which I will upload it today as well, even though I began or I recorded the message itself up to this point right here. I recorded it back in October, but here I am right now on the 16th of November, and I'm just getting my message out. Again, I record my messages, and then I go through each message and I edit them to fix any errors or to do whatever else I need to do with them to put them in a more perfect form, not in an exactly perfect form, but in a more perfect form to present to you, the people. I do a lot to get these recordings out here. And if any of you all, as you all see, these recordings are free to you, but it costed me thousands upon thousands to even purchase the equipment to do what I'm doing. Again, I don't believe in begging people for anything, but I do know this. If a seed has been sown into your life by way of knowledge, wisdom, revelation, preparation, if these recordings are helping you to maintain your life, either maintain your quality of life and even increase the quality of your life and the longevity of your life, now that we're in this season of death, this season of a pandemic, this season of a virus or multiple sicknesses and diseases and violence that are going to take millions of lives during the course of this season. If these recordings are helping you, if these recordings have helped you to go and supply yourself with weaponry, with ammunition, there's been a lot of people that I've helped to obtain weapons, ammunition, and just obtain a greater knowledge in God. If you know that what God has spoken through me, or what God has and is doing in your life to help better your life, then hey, it's not a sin for you to say, hey, look, I just want to show you some appreciation, and you can give up whatever it is God leads you to give up or to give back into, because you're really not giving up anything. Because if anybody gave up anything, I did at this point. I gave up the knowledge that I possess. I gave up the financial cost of all that I had to invest in to do what I'm doing. So if you feel that this has helped you, it would only be appropriate and generously, how would I say, grateful for you to return and reciprocate the same. However, this ain't going to stop me from being who I am as it relates to these recordings. I'm going to do this because it is God's plan and purpose for me to do it. I'm just saying, and any of you who feel, God gonna strike me down if I don't pay my tithes and offerings, and even though I'm not with the church, and I understand that the church system is coming to an end and all of this and whatever, but I'm still scared if I don't pay my tithes and offerings, that, the devil's gonna get me. The devil that don't exist and the hell that don't exist. I don't believe that the tithes and offerings are necessary in that sense anymore. Now, you do offer, you do give, but I'm not saying you give to a church. I'm not saying who you give to, but I will say who you give to. When you go to the grocery store, you don't go pay the gas station, you pay the grocery store, because that's where you receive your groceries from. That's where you receive your meal from. If you go to Popeyes and you buy chicken, you don't go to McDonald's and pay them for the burgers that you never received. So if Popeyes is feeding you, then look back at Popeyes. Stop being selfish. See, I hate to even have to say this here, but niggers, they got a problem. Y'all act like y'all don't even know how to see. The Bible says, if you see your brother or your sister in need and you shut up your bowels of compassion, how can you say the love of God is in you? Notice he didn't say if they ask you. It says if you see. The key is if you see. Now, the brother don't even have to have a need. But if the brother sowed into you a seed, then you should be more than understanding and appreciative to return and say, hey, because of the seeds that you've sown into my life that cannot be measured, because I'll let you know, your life cannot be measured. So if your life is being spared, or you at least have an inside look as to what God is doing in this season and as to what is occurring in this season, then you, my brother, you, my sister, you should return back with a seed saying thank you, because I can't even put a price on my life. I can't put a price on my family's life. And what you gave me helped me to preserve my family. So you owe it to your family to do right with your seed, especially if you are receiving from what you're receiving from. Some of you, you've even received bullets and guns, multiple of you, and ammunition. That's for you. That's for your household. Like, don't be telling my business. I don't want them to know we got some. Some of them may need to know. Why? Because for the most part, you're hoping that you don't have to use any of this. You're hoping that it will be a deterrent to the nut who decides to step in your lane and mess with you during this season. But anyway, you can't put a measurement on that. You can't put a measurement on spiritual worth, spiritual wealth. There's no way that you can put a measurement on the wealth and the worth of what it is. So those of you who hear this message and you're receiving from me, please understand that you cannot ignore what is going on, or ignore or fail to appreciate or fail to show appreciation for all that it took and all that it takes for me to put this many recordings out free of charge. I hate charging anything, doing a work for God or a work in relation to my destiny, my purpose. Yet, if you don't tell Negroes this, they will just rob you wickedly and feel good about it and boast about it, how free it was and how they just got it. Listen, I'll give you something. If the storyline is correct and the Jesus line is right and the Bible is, Jesus did heal 10 lepers and then only one came back. And Jesus said, now, didn't I heal 10 of you? So where's the other 9? That's them niggers. See, he probably healed that white person there, but them other 9 was niggers. Them niggers, man, they look, man, shoot, that stuff free. They giving out free stuff over there. Jesus doing free stuff over there. Ain't never thought one time to come back and get it right with the people. Never, not one time. Listen, don't walk over the brother who's helping you to live and helping you to grow. And those of you who are struggling with me as a person, but yet you eat from my table, you eat from the spiritual table that God prepared before me to feed you. You can't stand me, but you are partaking of my table. You need to look back and show your appreciation for that. If you don't want to give to the person, you got to give to the cause and you got to give to the substance, because I know there's loaded substance in these recordings because I pour my all. I pour my all until I get tired, until I get ragged tired, until I can't do anything but go and get on my bed and lay down and go to sleep, take a nap for an hour or two, because I'm so drained after doing what I do. I pour my life out for what I do. And anybody who knows me, they know that when I do something, I do it to completion or until you walk away like a nut. Because I say anybody who walks away from all that I bring to the table, first of all, you don't deserve my company. You don't deserve my wisdom. You don't deserve my substance or the substance that I bring to the table, because nobody leaves away from my table weighing the same. You gonna leave my table fatted like a fatted calf. Trust you me. But anyway, and those of you who have experienced that, you know that both literally and metaphorically, or however you want to say that. Okay. The reason why I stopped you, though, and decided to add this is because, again, we're at this. What day did I say this is? This is the 16th of November on a Monday morning. And I'm going to put it out tonight. I'm going to put this recording out tonight or this afternoon, so it'll be right out today. But initially, I recorded the front side of this recording back in October. But it takes this long for me to edit because I recorded about 40 messages regarding the prophetic utterances. And then after recording them all one by one, after recording all of them, I began to edit them. But the problem was I couldn't keep up. It takes hours to edit just one recording. So it took me all the way up to this point to get to this point to upload this. Yesterday, I just uploaded my messages to the church. If you missed that, or if you hadn't read that, you need to heard that, you need to get with that. That'll be something that'll open your eyes. Kind of rough, kind of rugged, but I don't apologize, though I do. But anyway, the reason why I came with this message is because now that we're in November and we're at this 16th day, did I say 16th? Yeah, 16th day of November, I have to add a few words to this message because this is my outgoing message in relation to the vision/dream. I'm seeing more and more that it was a vision versus a dream. But however it goes, it still has substance. And I know that I may have added so much information you probably couldn't keep up, and you may need to hear it again, or you may not even see the significance of it. But even if you don't see the significance of it, someone else may and will. I definitely see and need the significance of it. Therefore, I placed it in recording so it can be in my annuals too. I want to make sure that it's in my safekeeping in digital form as well. So if you don't like it or whatever, it is what it is. If it's true, which I believe it is, because most of it has come true and is ever coming forth as being true, as proving itself to be true, you will wish that you really heard what I was saying. I know it may have been hard for some of you because it's more spiritual than natural, even though the natural is manifesting the spiritual. You probably don't even understand it naturally because most people are walking right through this period. But now that we're where we are right now, many of you should see that black folk ain't even ready for what's getting ready to happen. Here we had last weekend, or over the weekend, Donald Trump's supporters came to Washington, D.C., especially the church house, and they came out in the thousands to Washington, D.C., claiming we're taking our cities back and our streets back and all or whatever. Well, black folks should be going to the White House and saying we're taking our house back because we built this house. But anyway, I'm just saying. But check this out. Listen to this here. If you black folk hadn't woke up yet to see what time it is, if you white folk who's on the side of justice hadn't awakened or hadn't, whatever you call it, hadn't woke up, if you ain't woke, if this weekend didn't wake you up to where we are as a people, as a nation, listen, when the church is rising up against justice, when the church is standing up, singing church songs over all the blood that was shed, over all the injustice, over all the illegality of a King Cyrus, of a King Nebuchadnezzar, of a King Saul called Donald Trump. If the church is rising up against us, if the church is saying we ain't backing down and we're going to fight to the death, do you understand what time it is for those of you who are standing on the side of righteousness and justice? There is no hatred like a religious hatred. There's no murdering like a person murdering for the sake of God, for the sake of their belief in God, in God's wrath, his anger. Listen, that's what you all are getting ready to come up against. And every extreme, from whatever extreme on that side of things, on that argument of things, they're preparing to come at you. You need to prepare yourself and wake the hell up. Sleepy, wake up. Wake up. I had a cousin in South Florida named Sleepy. He died now, Rod. Rod died a year ago. A year and maybe 5 months ago. I happened to be in South Florida visiting, me and my family. We went to Disney World and went to South Florida to see my family. And as soon as I get in South Florida, the very next morning I get up to go riding around to see family and people that I grew up with. My cousin Rod runs right across the street, right in front of the vehicle that I was driving. And I was like, there he did. So I circled around, called him over, him and his wife, and I'm like, how you doing, Rod, or whatever? And he said, man, I feel like I'm going to be out of here. I'm going to die. He's like 5'6", he's probably about 8 years younger than me, maybe 10 years younger than me. But anyway, sure enough, 2 days later, he ended up in the hospital. I got a call from my father and told me to go to Fort Lauderdale. He's in the hospital. He's in a coma. There's something happened with his thyroids or whatever. And sure enough, he died. Sleepy. We call him Sleepy. That's what people call him because his eyes were very small and he always looked like he was sleepy. Good guy, fun guy. That's what you black folks are doing. That's what you folk, whatever race you are, who are not awake, wide open, alert, knowledgeable of what's going on. You're sleeping right now. You better wake the hell up. You better wake the hell up. Listen, if you thought the guns were gone, they surely left as of yesterday, Sunday, and as of today, Monday. You thought the bullets were gone. Man, woman, boy, girl, they sure enough gone now. Trust you me. Y'all better wake up and do something. When these folks are telling you all ain't gonna be ready for us. You better believe they know what they're talking about. You're not gonna be ready. I'll say again, and I'll say again, and I'll say again until it's proven that I'm wrong. On the back of that military style truck, all those black bodies in that truck represent something. And again, I believe it represents that many of us will be dead. We will not be here. Or should I say, y'all who sleep ain't gonna be here. Listen, it's gonna be not so good. And it's gonna be not so good to those of color. And I'm sure those who are standing on the side of right, which ends up putting you over on the side of a certain color to a certain degree. But I'm grateful that you folks are standing up, because I would do the same for you all. Now, would I go out there in the streets? Well, I probably won't go out in the streets, because that's not where God is calling me. I got to do what I'm doing right here. I got to do this right here. But what I'm saying to you is you all need to wake up. You need to get yourselves right. You need to pay attention. You really need to pay attention. You need to get yourselves right. Get yourselves right. Arm yourselves. Stay in your house. God said your security is in your house. You want to listen to the things we must do in order to fare well in this season. You will see it under the pandemic, prophetic utterances. You will see it. It'll say the things we must do, the things that are required of us that we must do. There are, I think, 3 messages. I think it could be more than that. Don't hold me to 3. Could be 2, 3, or 4. I can't remember. But anyway, now I'm going to have to begin to edit those now, because I hadn't edited those yet. But you're going to want those, because those are going to give you insight into what you need to do. And you need to begin to do them, sir, ma'am, young man, young woman, little boy, little girl. I don't know how you say that, little boy, little girl. You know, I call my grown boys, you know, my grown, anyway. Listen, prepare yourself, because it's not going to be pretty. There was a precursor to what's going to be going on Saturday in Washington, D.C. It's coming. Yeah, a few of you going to knock a few of them out, just like y'all did on Saturday. Y'all knocked a few of them out. But they ain't coming back with you all with no fists. They coming back with their guns, their AK-47s, their AR-15s, their 50 calibers, their 300 blackouts, their 308s. Man, they coming strong at you all. What are you all talking about? This ain't going to be no street brawl. That ain't how they play. When has a fight ever been fair? Even in the doggone ring, the boxing ring, no fight fair. Listen, y'all stay out them folks' faces. Stop yelling in them folks' faces. They got something y'all don't got. They got something that most of y'all don't have. Y'all better sit down. Stay out their faces. Stay out them streets. Cover your mouth. Cover your hands. Use your sanitizer. Believe that God is working in this season. Believe that this pandemic is real. We got 185,000 cases in one day. In the last 6 days, we racked up. It took I think they said it took 90 something days to get to the first million infected in the United States. We took 90 something days for the first million. In the last 6 days, we made over 1 million new cases here in this divided, stolen states of ungodly America. We hit over 1 million cases in a 6-day period, when it initially took 90 something days for us to get to that, either 90 something or 110, something to that effect. Whatever it is, you can Google it and hopefully you can still find it. Now we're doing that in 6 days. If y'all don't hear what I'm telling y'all, God told me it's going to happen in this season. And y'all better stop hoping in a vaccine. Hell, think about it. When you ever trusted these folks enough to be putting anything in your system anyway? And those of you who are in the military, you know they've used us as guinea pigs. We got issues and illness and diseases in our bodies that we still don't know how they got there. But it only occurs, such illnesses and diseases only occur in those in the military or those who were sent overseas or those who took certain vaccinations to go into certain areas or certain regions of the world. Military. Y'all should know. You don't sit here and bank on these vaccines. You better do something. Maxine, you better do something. Trying to wait on that vaccine. You better do something, Maxine. You too, Roger. Y'all better do something. Listen. God said this virus is here and it must run its course. You sit here and look for a vaccine. There'll be no cure. There may be one who only God knows when, if ever. But I know what God was telling me. Now, y'all sit here and take these vaccines down. God will tell you something, or God will use somebody to tell you something, and you won't believe him for nothing. Now you believe in the very folks who are sitting up here telling you don't even need to wear a mask. When this first came out, you don't need to wear no mask. Leave the PPE gear alone. Leave it for the professionals. You don't need a mask. Now those same people are the ones telling you, hey, look here, you better come get this vaccination. We rushed it through the system just for you. Well, you could rush it out of my face just for me. Because I ain't. Listen. See, y'all trust that more than y'all trust God. Y'all ain't even trusting the words I'm telling you. Even though it's happening right in your face. Look how many people dying. Every day last week, we had over 1,000 people dying. We had, I think, 1,800 and something down one day, I think Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday. In the United Divided States of Stolen America, we had that many people dying. They just said yesterday, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be at 3,000 a day dying here in this divided, stolen states of ungodly America. Remember, I said to you all, don't be surprised when we get to 5,000 to 7,000 a day. Remember, President Biden, he's not going to even be in position to do anything until the end of January. Well, hell, you're saying we're going to have to live like this from now to January? Do you not know that virus will be up under every nook, every crevice, every crack, every hole, up under every rock in every tree of every limb, or every limb of every tree? Every leaf of every limb of every tree? Listen, how are we going to get rid of that at that point? Y'all better understand what's getting ready to happen, folk. Y'all better wake the hell up. That's the only reason I'm adding this in here, because I'm here to tell you, wake the hell up, people. This thing is real. And y'all black folk, y'all other folks too, stay the hell out of these house parties. What are you going to these super spreaders for? Almost every house party y'all have, your dog gonna end up having shootings and killings at the house parties. So what Cora don't do to you, you do to yourself. What the hell is y'all there for? Where is your mama? Where is your daddy? Where is your wife? Where's your husband? Where's your boyfriend? Where's his love for you? Where's your girlfriend? Why ain't she telling you to stay home? Where is your children? What is you thinking? And then you going to go home talking about, oh, I got to get home to my babies. I got to protect my babies. Silly, you bringing the damn virus right there with the baby. How the hell you loving and caring for your baby and you out there? Even if you got a babysitter, the babysitter probably brought the thing to the baby. What is you thinking? And get your kids out of them schools. Y'all people, y'all should be hearing God by now in your religious life. Get your children out of school. I don't care where they at. Why don't y'all sit still and let God do something with y'all? Huh? My granddaddy used to say that all the time. Why don't y'all just sit down somewhere? Huh? I always wonder, why you always put behind that? You're like, did he not just hear himself talking about, why don't y'all just go sit down somewhere? Huh? I'm like, why he going? Hey, he might be going deaf. He ain't even heard himself just now. But he always said that, why don't y'all just sit down somewhere, huh? And that's what I'm saying to y'all folk. Why don't y'all sit down somewhere, huh? Get out them damn house parties. Those are super duper spreaders. Why are you doing this to your silly self? Sit your happy ass down somewhere. See, I told you I only use these words when it's necessary. It's necessary because your damn life is on the line and your ass is out there partying. Sit down somewhere, have a party in your house, you and yourself and yours. In these picnics, people, sit your happy asses down somewhere. You don't need no picnic. Sit down somewhere. Don't nobody want your dried burnt burgers? No way. You ain't never, you nor Cousin John or Uncle Roger, y'all ain't never been able to cook them damn ribs right. Why don't y'all put the doggone grill up and sit down somewhere? The virus is in the air. If your neighbor is on the other side of that gate, coughing like all hell and the wind is blowing, it's all over your picnic food. Why don't y'all stop this here, huh? Stop it. And those of you who on that weed and all this other stuff, listen, you're going to need your lungs to get through this season. Stop killing your lungs. Stop killing yourself. Now you're going to weed yourself through this whole season. You just going to stay high and doped up for this whole season. What are you doing to yourselves? You're not thinking. You're not using common sense, people. And those of you who ain't where you're supposed to be, you're going to pay for it. It's going to cost you because you were not in position when you were supposed to be in position. Many of you are out of position. You're in other states. You're here, you're there, you're everywhere. You're in everybody's house but your own. Y'all folk gonna get in trouble. Your children in everybody's house but their own. Y'all gonna be in trouble. There's going to be a cost to this season. This season is not free, people. You're going to give an account for it. And every bit of running that you did in order to not buckle your little happy, non-happy ass down, you are going to pay a price for it. Hear you me. Don't you get caught up on my damn words. This is somebody trying to wake your silly ass up. Wake the hell up, people. All you religious folks who can't take what I'm saying, just get the hell off. Get the hell off my recordings and go sit your happy butts down too. No, let me say this. Go sit your happy asses down. And if you want to edit anything that I say so you can play it to somebody else, take it all. Give it all to them. Maybe they need to hear it all too. Don't cheat them. So these house parties and these picnics, and understand, and church, these churches, and You know the holidays are coming. Stop being stupid, people. Sometimes you got to get one of your black owns to come on and say something like this, because y'all black folk don't be wanting to listen to these white folk when they be telling y'all to stay home. They all telling y'all stay your happy asses home, and y'all still want to go out into these damn streets. Leave the streets alone, people. Leave the streets alone. You think my words are harsh? Watch what this virus does. Watch what death does to you when you have to experience from those you know, from those you are acquainted, very well acquainted with, even biologically. When you find out that you're the one who brought it home to your whole family, whole households are dying. Just like God told me way back in March, whole households are dying. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, all of them dying. Whole households being infected. What are you talking about? What are you thinking about, people? And you stuck on a one or two words that I'm saying. If you ain't silly as all hell, you about as silly as that devil that ain't even there. And then think about it, people. How many rappers have we seen, music artists have we seen, who have died during this pandemic of the virus and through the violence from going out here in these damn streets, doing whatever the hell y'all want to do, like, cause you got money, Cora gonna respect your money. Don't you know Herman Cain died with all that money he had? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You sound like, anyway. You in that hotel room with Washington Mayor Marion Bratt, whatever his name was, smoking that crack pipe. Because if you sitting up here thinking that all is well in the camp, and somehow you're not going to be a victim to all that is going on. You see all of these rappers becoming victims. Almost every week we have one or two rappers dying, being killed. For what? That's our color. Are those part of the bodies on the back of that vehicle? Now the question is, will you wind up proving that you were one of those bodies that I saw on the back of that vehicle? Because listen, we as blacks, there's going to be a many of us. And y'all thinking that it ain't going to be you. If you don't put that crack down and realize that crack is truly whack, you going to be in a world of trouble, and you going to be on the back of one of them damn trucks that I saw full of them dead black bodies. That's all I got to say. I appreciate you. On the next one.